Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Staltare, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last several years, I've been featuring each fille du roi, King's Daughter, and getting to know each and every one of their stories a little bit better. There are over 700 of them. Today we're doing episode 209. So we've come such a long way, but we've got a long way to go. So join me, please, as we explore a new fille du roi. But before we begin, let me show you ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know. Subscribe, like, and notify. All that helps my logarithms. The next three are ways to help the channel grow. We have Coffee, which is a one-time payment. We have Patreon, which is a monthly subscription. And we have the Super Thanks here on YouTube. I also have my PayPal donation button on my website, Have Roots Will Travel. So for those of you who like PayPal, that's your way to do that. For those of you who have contributed and helped me out and been so supportive with your letters and email, I really, really appreciate you reaching out. So with that being said, let's get started and get to know our fille du roi for this episode. On episode 209, our fille du roi of this episode is Anne Foubert, and she is a viewer request. I did not find her in any of my files. So Anne was born in 1651 in Chartres, France. Her parents were Louis Foubert and Marie Charpentier. Now you can see by the map that the Ile de France is circled. That means that she comes essentially from the Paris suburbs. I've circled the suburb, Seine-et-Marne. And that is the area that she bought. So even though it looks big, it really is very close to Paris. Chartres began as a Roman camp, so it's been there for a long, long time. And it's documented as the place where Saint Corbien was born around 670, and where he maintained an hermitage for 14 years. So it has that kind of religious feel to it. Right now, there's about 700 people that live there, and this is the church where she would have been baptized. It's obviously being renovated, and you can see that it is just a very simple little village, really next to very near Paris, you know. So people who want to escape the city would probably have a place there, you know. So let's have a look at Anne's journey. So she sailed on La Nouvelle France. She arrived actually in Montreal July 30th, 1670, and there is no evidence that her parents had passed away. There's no evidence of a dowry. She was housed at Maison Saint-Gabriel. Let's get to know a little bit more about Maison Saint-Gabriel. So the picture on your right is the actual Maison Saint-Gabriel, where where Anne would have spent the very first days that she was in New France. Maison Saint-Gabriel was founded by Marguerite Bourgeois, who was herself the founder of the Congregation de Notre-Dame de Montréal. She was by far the most influential woman in Quebec and certainly Montreal's history. She was born in France in 1620, and by 1653, at the age of 33, she was invited to come to New France and establish a religious congregation and school by none other than Paul de Chaumetti, Sieur de Maisonneuve, the governor of the French settlement of Montreal. She established the Notre Dame congregation and helped organize the church. The governor allowed her to use a stable as the first schoolhouse, and this in turn became the first public school in Montreal. In 1663, she continued her work with the fille du roi by using the farm she purchased on Point Saint-Charles to feed the poor and create a source of revenue for the church. The fille du roi would come here and receive instruction on their new lives, including cooking and sewing, and the sisters would oversee the selection of the husbands. Marguerite would continue until her death, creating educational and religious institutions that would help the struggling town of Ville-Marie, which would one day become the mighty Montreal. Marguerite Bourgeois was made a saint in 1982, and she was the first Canadian woman to be so honored. The groom that she would select and who would select her, his name, Pierre Boisseau, and he was born in 1646 in a place called Trans-sur-Erdre, France. It took me so long to find any information on this small place. His parents were René Boisseau and René Martin. I love that, René and René. And you can see that it is the Pays de la Loire region of France. And he is the département, the county, is part of the Loire Atlantique. There's about 1,100 people that live there. As we speak, the Saint Peter and Saint Mandé, Saint Pierre and Saint Mandé Church that you see before you dates from the 11th century, and the current church was remade in the 18th century. And these are the fortifications of just the bridges and that sort of thing that you see on your upper right, just to give you a feel for how old it really is, this is where Pierre would have been coming from. So they didn't waste much time. They got married October 20th, 1670. So a couple months after she arrived, she got her instructions, the nuns approved, and there they were married. This is their marriage record. They would settle at Longueuil to begin with. Let's give you a little bit of history of Longueuil. It was founded in 1657 by Charles Lemoine, who was a merchant from Ville-Marie, the present-day Montreal, as a seigneurie. According to Abbé Fayon, Charles Lemoine, lord of the area starting in 1657, named Longueuil after the village of Longueuil, which is today the seat of the canton in the district of Dieppe in his homeland of Normandy. His son, Charles Lemoine de Longueuil, built Fort Longueuil as his fortified residence. It was constructed of stone between 1685 and 1690 and had 4 towers. And that's what you see on the right hand. This is the magnificent church, obviously, was built much later in Longueuil. And this is kind of how you approach Longueuil, into Montreal, onto the island. So it is an off-island place, very important. I grew up in a town called Drummondville, and would have to pass through Longueuil in order to get to Montreal. So it's a very important area locationally for those people that live off island in this, toward Quebec City. Would eventually settle at Verchères. Verchères is about 62 kilometers northeast of Montreal. So they went even further than Longueuil. You can see Verchères in that circled spot. And it's situated on the south shore of the St. Lawrence River between Longueuil and Sorel. In 1665, François Jarret, Sœur de Verchères, obtained a commission with the Carignan-Salière Regiment and was sent to New France. In 1672, he was granted the seigneurie of Verchères for his military service. During wartime, the seigneurie was subjected to frequent Iroquois attacks. To combat this problem, de Verchères erected a palisade around the manor house. It was from the defense of this palisade that the legend of his daughter, 14-year-old Marie-Madeleine Jarret de Verchères, originates. Now, that is her statue that is in Verchères. So this is the place that she defended, which is just a remarkable thing. And we know the story of Marie-Madeleine de Verchères. Why? Because she would eventually settle in Sainte-Anne-de-la-Parade, and I recently toured her home. So she just permeates Quebec history. And this is an aerial view of Verchères. They would have an astonishing 17 children. Jacques would not have any evidence of marrying, and we know that he was not alive or present in 1722 at the reading of his father's will. Louis would pass away at the age of 13. Bernard would also not be present at the reading of his father's will. Marie-Madeleine died at 8 years of age. Antoine would marry Angélique Sébastien and would have at least one child who made it to adulthood. Pierre would become an engagé out west, and we do not know any other information. Angélique would marry Jean-Baptiste Chauffour and have 2 children, one of whom would make it. Jean-Baptiste would become an engagé out west. He would marry Suzanne Cossette, but no other information is available. René would pass away in infancy. Jean would die before 1702. Vincent would marry Marie Marguerite Volant and have 11 children, 7 of whom would make it. Gilles would die in infancy. Marianne would also die in infancy. Marie would also die in infancy. Marie would marry Paul Chicoine and have 10 children, 4 of whom would make it. Jean-Baptiste would die in infancy. And Marianne would not marry, and she would pass away at the age of 26. So despite the amount of children that they had, you can see that the descendancy would not be as strong as it might have been due to the incredible. I mean, we talk about the dying in infancy and all of that, but I mean, these are real people, and this is what they endured. And it was just keep going, that sort of thing, And then the 1681 census, we have Pierre and Anne. Their children, who were alive at that time, were Jacques, Louis, Bernard, Madeleine, Antoine. They have 2 guns, they have 10 goats, and 9 arpents valaires, so about 7 acres of land. And I also want to make sure that those of you who are into DNA and there may be some of those engagés out west that we kind of lost track of. There is a possibility that this family would have had more descendants than we suspect. September 22nd, 1699, Jacques would pass away. He and Anne had been married but 29 years. For that time, it wasn't that long a period. So Anne would carry on alone, and she did not remarry. She had to fight for the guardianship of her children. Remember, at that time, women were not automatically, given the right to children. They had to fight for it, and then she would have had a second co-signer kind of thing. And then the estate is finally settled in 1722. I have posted links to the actual documents that I found so that you can read them at your leisure. They're fascinating documents. Life would come to an end on April 4th, 1729. She was 80 years old. She would have had, at that point, 42 descendants. If this is your descendancy, when you visit Verchères, you will be able to see by the water's edge memorials to not only Anne, but also Pierre. And what this says on the right hand is Les Familles Pionnières. So it's the pioneer families. And these are the filles du roi that came, and she was among them. For further research, she is profiled in the book that is done by la Société d'Histoire des Filles du Roi. It is in French. Les Filles du Roi, the pioneers of the Seigneurie de Varennes et de Verchères. And I've posted a link for you as well. Here are some of my favorite resources. Speaking of the Société d'Histoire des Filles du Roi, this is a new one that I've added because of their work that they've done and a lot of the out in the field kind of research that they do. Not only the books that they create, but they also have events. I would urge you to check out their website in case you're visiting Quebec and can partake in some of these. That would be amazing. But just have a look at that website and see if it's something that you would like to check out. So what can we say about Anne? She was a survivor. She was someone who not only endured the loss of so many children, but she also persevered trying to make sure that she was going to get the right to them. And she also persevered for her husband's estate. She did not remarry, which is very unusual in the time, and she went at it alone. So for that, for all that she went through, for her amazing contribution to Verchères, she was among the pioneers, so you have a tribute there. And we want to just bless her memory and thank her for all that she did. And I want to say a special thanks to my patrons and supporters for helping me and absolutely being there for me. So thank you so much to all my patrons and supporters. Now, I will see you on episode 210. Until then, au revoir.